let me make a proper introduction here, okay? Because this is a mess. So hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome, please sit and gather and listen. On this beautiful day, me, Rakasa, the Magnificent, is going to explain to you how I go about painting stylized hair. And I will try and first of all give you a little bit of some basics about hair and like the structure of hair and how it interacts with light and everything, so you get a basic understanding. And once we looked into a few examples on like how that shit works and we broke it down, we're gonna move on and we're going to paint some of that hair ourselves. And if you're like stressed and everything, like, oh my god, I want to paint hair, but shit, I don't have a base or I don't have anything, there is a pinned link for a template, which you can see here, for some basic ass heads that we can use. And I also linked the brushes I use, because I only use 3 brushes. So nothing fancy, I ain't cheating. I'm using a hard round brush, that's it. So, you know, you can follow along. If you have a painting program and you have electricity, you can follow along. So, hair, the basics of hair. One of the biggest problems when it comes to hair is that people don't properly separate it, and they don't properly think of hair as a 3D structure, especially when it comes to how it's interacting with the light, okay? In this case, we're having a very distinct, clear point from where the hair is going out, you know? When you're on top of your head, basically every human has like this point where the hair is kind of like swirling around. It's like very apparent when it comes to like men and short hairstyles. You can really see that they often have like one specific point where the hair is curling around. It's like this basic point which we should keep in mind from like where the hair should go out from. So instead of just having a face and then you kind of have the hair coming from everywhere and it looks totally weird, we always want to try and keep like one point somewhere in mind, so it either could be in the middle and then we have all the hair coming from that single point, but of course it doesn't have to be in the middle. If you have a side cut, okay, it would be something like this, then we would have our center point here, and then all the hair would go out from that center point, okay? So let's just see here. In this case, we are having the center point on that part, and you can also nicely see it underneath, because if we zoom all the way out here, you can really see how the hair like dips in here, right? It has this little dent. So it's relatively easy to identify this singular point from where all the hair kind of emerges. Or we're having this center point, and now if we're looking at this example, we can kind of see that it has different sections to here. Okay, so basically we have this point, and now we can kind of look at it in sections here. So we have one big section for the bangs. And we have another big section here for the side hair, which goes like this and then overlaps here with the bang section. But you can also see back here that it also emerges in these bigger sections. But you can always lead it all back to the point from where it originally came from, right? Like even these hairs down here, which seem to be really far away from the original point, if you like lead them all the way back up, they will go back to the center point on the top. Everything that you want to do, all the sections for the hair, You want to kind of have them emerge from one center point. And the next one is important for understanding how light interacts with hair. So basically, for stylized hair, it works a lot like ribbons when it comes to how it interacts with lighting. What do I mean with like the ribbon theory, or like the ribbon kind of shit? Is exactly what is happening here, okay? So as you can see, we have like two very distinct sides for a piece of hair. So we have like this entire top part here, and then it kind of folds in on itself, and then we get a bottom part of the hair. So we also have like this one where we have like the upper one, and then we have the one where it curls around and it's underneath. And this one is like very stylized, but it's actually helping us a lot for like how to tackle hair with lights and shadows. Also, again, here we can see this is the middle point, and everything emerges from this point. So all the lines can be traced back to this middle point. Again, keep it in mind, okay? Imagine we're just having a strand coming from the top, and it curls around because it's somewhat dynamic. You would have this part as like the top part, and then maybe it curls in on itself, and then we have this one as the bottom one. And the thing that would happen is that we would have like a strong difference in lighting and shadows. If we have the light coming from up here, all of this would get hit by the light and would stay bright. And then as it curls away, kind of like a ribbon, it would get a little bit darker. When it curls all the way down, this part here would be hidden from the light and would be like very much dark, right? And if it curls back up here, theoretically, it gets hit by the light again and it's bright once more. Understanding the lighting on a ribbon is a lot simpler than trying to understand the lighting on a freaking piece of hair, because hair always seems so abstract. If you're breaking it down to basic structures like ribbons, it makes a lot more sense, at least for me. We're having once more a point from where all the hair emerges. So again, everything is kind of emerging from here, going out in all the different directions, but it all leads back to this point. But yeah, this one is like a great example for this over here, okay, for the lighting theory. We're having these big chunks. So here we're having this chunk, okay? So if we're isolating it in like one piece, this is like the chunk that we get. And again, if we're looking at it more like a ribbon and less like hair in a complicated way, you can see that it basically is a piece of ribbon flowing and folding around. So it first goes up here, then it has a little bit of fold, and it goes back out. And the lighting is coming very much from the top. So you know, all of this is getting hit by the light, and then it curls back in. So this is left in shadow, and that's why this is dark. This one again is curling outwards, so it's all bright and hit by the light. And the inside of the ribbon, so to say, or the hair, is not getting any light. So this is all in shadow, right? But it's like very much a broken down structure. And then as it curls away from the light, again, it is in shadow. So we're having these light parts because they're all facing up. And we're having all of these big dark parts because they are all facing down. And here in this case, you can also see that we have this big chunk. Here all of this is nice and bright because it's facing up, so it's getting hit by the light. And as it curls down, it's again once more in shadow. But you can see it looks broken down. It looks a lot actually like folds, you know, like clothing. So to some degree, you can also compare the hair structure to like clothing folds and how things overlap with one another. It's just basically the way that they end is just in a more pointy way, right? What we're trying to do is to basically make everything a lot more simpler for us, because oftentimes a lot of work from painting has to do with like the mental work and how you see these kinds of things and how you break them down. And I think many artists are having the big problems with hair because they think of it as this super complex structure, while it's actually it can be broken down into a way more simpler 3D structure, like folds, like clothing, like ribbons, if you want to compare them. And from that point on, you can add more and more and more and more detail, and then it gets way easier to do that kind of shit. So let's give her some, I don't know, some dark blue green here. I am using the hard round 504 brush. Okay, so I'm taking a nice blue here, and I'm going to take this point as my beloved center point on which I am going to center all my hair around. Okay. Another interesting thing again is for this typical swirl on the forehead. So you can either have like the hair be relatively flat, right, and just come out like this. But if you want to give it a little bit more shazam, if you want to give it a little bit more volume, we're going to give it this little lift up, this volume that it has. And again, we're just going to follow one simple structure here. I'm going with just one line. And let's say it is behind the ear here. So we're going with basic shapes. And while you're putting in the shapes, you can already see, do you like the shape or do you dislike the shape? So just go bit by bit. And let's say, okay, it's all getting tucked behind the ear. So this is going to be basically one point to the next point is what I am going for. So I take out another line here. And I'm kind of following this imaginary bouncy line where it's the highest point of the hair or the highest point of the ribbon if we're breaking it down again. And then maybe it's thinner here and thicken it up again more. We're just gonna bring in some variation. And we can still kind of see where the head is going here. So behind that, I'm taking another line. I am imagining that it's going from this point. I'm not painting it out. I'm just thinking about it so I don't have a bunch of overlapping lines. And then we're going to let it go behind the ear again. And maybe have a little strand here, which I'm not going to connect. So also having some strands that you're not connecting and just letting them fade out is also going to go a long way instead of trying to connect every single stroke. If I am happy with the overall shape here, also another thing that creates a lot of dynamics, a lot of nice little differences in the silhouette is if we're having some parts that are a little bit higher than others. So you can see here I'm having this little indent because this strand is having a little bit more volume than the one behind. So it's going up a little bit higher, and the one behind, basically, if I would put the line, it would go like this. But again, I'm not painting it in. So I'm just giving these like different heights to make a more interesting silhouette. Okay, so now that I have this, when it comes to hair being tucked behind the ear, there is 2 ways to go. There's 20 million ways to go about it. But basically you can have the hair tucked behind, and are there certain points in a ribbon that tend to be thicker? It's not really about it being thicker or thinner. It's more like about the shape being more or less visible. So if you're having this ribbon here, it could be really visible and really thick, and then it's thin here, and then you see more of it, and then it crosses over and ends like this. Then this would technically be a thicker one, but it's not thicker and thinner. It's about it curling away from the viewer or not, right? So in this case, it would curl away here, and it would appear thinner. Hi, Molly! Or here again, when it's curling away, it would appear thinner. Okay, so now we can go about this in different ways. For example, we could say, okay, we want to make a little strand that comes out in front of the ear. And again, I am having a imaginary line that leads this strand all the way up until here. Okay, this strand is also coming from this top part. I'm just not gonna paint it in because this strand is laying on top. So we're just kind of layering hair sections on top of each other. And we just imagine the other ones, the underlying ones, to go from the same point. We're just not painting it in. But I think if you're ever doubting if your strand makes sense, you could always try to paint it in and trace it all the way back from the origin point. And if it makes sense the way it's painted in, you know you're doing it right. So that could also be kept in mind. We're just not painting in every opacity. Yeah, it's not visible, right? If you're having one ribbon in front of the other ribbon, you can't see the underlying one. And that's just, it's very logical, and it's exactly the same with hair strands. Imagine you're just having one point and you have like all these ribbons that are attached to it. You will not be able to see some of them if the other ones are laying above, right? So that's how you can imagine your hair strands too. So because we have this one section here and we have the second one over there, now we're just having a third one here, which could maybe have this nice structure there. And I'm trying to explain now why I do things the way I do. You can see that I'm starting small and then it is getting thicker. And it gives this an overall nice dynamic here. Also, maybe this is like one section and then we're having this one over here. And now to the reason why it starts thinner and then it's spreading out. It's basically, since this is like tucked behind the ear, right? And there's some hair in front of it. The hair on the strand up here, on this part, it is being compressed. It is being squished together because it's coming out from underneath the other hair. So it is in like one squished position. And as it flows down, the hair is no longer compressed. So we're getting a broader strand here. And it's starting to feather out into like individual hair strands. And this is like these ones that I am indicating. I could also go for like a very a very straight one. So if I had like a very straight here, it could also look something like this. But sorry, since I'm trying to get it a bit more dynamic, I am trying to give it a bit more of a natural slight curl instead of going very straight with it. Okay, so we're having this part. And let's go about the other side here. I'm going to also flip it for easier access and in order to always see if things are correct or not. What the difference between conditioner and shampoo? They both wash hair. Oh my god, I can't believe you guys. Okay, so another nice thing, we can have a little we can basically imitate this shape over here, this big C curve. We're just going to do it in a way smaller scale, and it makes a lot of sense because this is like the major part of the hair, so that means that there is a lot more hair in general on this side than on this side of the hair because it's split. That means that we don't have the same amount of volume on this side, so we're having a little bit of a smaller shape, which can maybe in this case even go on top of the ear, and then it leads back down here. I think it has to be a bit more of a stronger curve. Okay, let's say something like this. And let me correct the line. So this would be the line for the other side. Pretty good. How about you? I'm doing good. I'm trying to explain here. And there would also be a few hairs visible from underneath here, from where the hairs kind of like spurt out on the side. I can also recommend just looking into a freaking mirror on this if you're not bald. If you're bald, I don't know, look at your sister, look at your mom, and look at how the hair on the side of the head basically goes somewhat in up here. Some even have like these teeny tiny baby hairs, okay? So if you're wanting to add a little bit more of interest on the sides, you can add these little baby hairs, which kind of go out in like a C curve. Okay, and now we are having this basic shape. We are following the line. If you're bald, let me polish your head. So yeah, we're going to determine the second line here. It's also, hair always adds volume to the head, okay? So if you have your skull, okay, and it ends right there, unless you have like incredibly greasy hair that is pressed to your skull and basically looks weird like this, okay? Unless you're a weirdo that has his hair pressed all the way to his skull. Hair will always have a bit more of a volume to it, and it's going to add some more height to the skull, okay? So if your skull adds here, the hair lays on top of it. So be sure to give it some space and not paint it directly on the skull, because it has volume by itself, right? So give it some space, let it breathe, let it do its thing. Don't just press it to the head, it makes no sense. Okay, so we're having the outside shape, and since we determined it's going over the ear, I'm going to mentally make a remark there that it doesn't have to be tucked in or anything. We can just go over. And also what generally looks nice is to to have this kind of shape for the hair outline on the head. So don't let your hair just go down in a freaking triangle shape, okay? Rather, let it follow the overall silhouette of your head. So we have the head, we have the neck, we have the shoulders. Hair doesn't just go like this, okay? This is whack as fuck. We have the hair and it goes somewhat in, while the neck right here where it's thinner, it goes in, and then on the shoulders it goes back out, okay? So it's making this curve because of where the space is, right? So while there's the head, the hair can't go in. Then you have the neck, so it goes in, and then you have the shoulder, so it goes back out. So we're having this overall shape, right? So while it's on the head part, it goes out. Then with the neck, there isn't so much space to go out, so we're having a light curve back inwards. And then for the shoulders, again, it's getting dragged outwards. And we can do the same thing here. And I am basically imagining the same thing happening on the back here. I'm not going to paint it in, but it's going to mentally emerge from this point, and then maybe even add a little bit more volume here. Go back in slightly and go back out when it hits the shoulders. And we're having an overall nice silhouette, right? Very great, very nice. Also here in this case, we're having some hair that is going in front of the body and then merges back behind the shoulder. And now something we can do to add a little bit more interest to our silhouette is that we can have some strands kind of emerge from the hair silhouette and then go back in again. So you can just imagine adding some little extra ribbons here and there, okay? They can also vary in size, so they can be a bit thicker. So here also we could have one that comes out and then merges back in. So something like that. And you can always just look at your overall silhouette and see if anything looks off, anything looks weird. If everything is still fine, you can keep going. You can keep adding shit, right? Okay, so we have this. And then we have maybe another little strand here. Blah, 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 like that. Okay. And maybe we have another one there. And also these strands and getting a feeling for it is just, it also comes with time, okay? So don't be super stressed if your shit looks a little bit off in the beginning. It's something you learn bit by bit. Also important, if you're having one of these big luscious curves up here, you have to make sure that the part where your hair starts has to be shown. So the hair line is kind of starting here, and it has to be shown as one big shadow underneath. Something like this, and here as well. And you can even have like these little parts cutting in to show the hairline starting, okay? So basically like that. Does it make sense so far? So clear for the outlines? That makes sense so much more. I was thinking about that. Yes. Okay. Let's see.